Good morning, everyone. Shama here with the Infinite Center. Listening to some pretty birds. Crowing. Just had a falcon or a hawk fly right above me screeching. Our little pond here brings a lot of... We have a tilapia pond here. Brings a lot of animals around. Tilapia in there. We had some fruit trees growing. Yard's a little mess right now, so I'm not going to show you around too much, but this isn't even really the reason for the video today. Main reason being N.O.D.E.R. Numbering or dividing dimensions. Errs reality. Okay, so what I mean by that is basically I'm trying to figure out how to turn my camera here now. Whatever, I'll keep it like this. Maybe it'll be easier to talk this way. Okay, so basically what I've got here is a little note, a little piece of paper. Okay, so numbering or dividing dimensions. Errs reality. Is basically strays from E-R-R. E-R-R. It is a word. I'm not just making up words, but you could check on me. You could check my stuff. Okay. So, and the reason why numbering or dividing dimensions is not an accurate depiction of what dimensions really are. Okay, so basically, we'll start with what they know for dimensions. It's one dimension. You have 0 dimension, we'll represent that with a dot. That wouldn't be even a dot, actually, if it's 0 dimension, but we'll just represent that point of 0 dimension right there. Okay, and they say this is 2 dimension. That's 1 dimension. That little dot represents 1 dimension. And then this field right here actually, no, I'm sorry, this is 1 dimension. 1 dimension, this way and this way. The dot will be no dimension. Okay, so you got this way and this way. That's 1 dimension. So what they do for math, they have the XY axis and they can pretty much figure everything out. And then, so you have 2 dimension. That would be like your XY axis. Okay. So, and they use all kinds of math. It's basically like a, if I remember correctly from grade school, it's like a plot thing, I don't know, where you have X whatever numbers and you have certain denotations or demarcations on here that show X whatever, and you can go A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3, and then that basically gets you a point on a graph, and you can go anywhere in those 2 dimensions on this 2-dimensional plane. And that's good for representation in mathematics, to do things, to accomplish things, because that's like the masculine structured way of looking at it, but it's not the truth. It doesn't encompass the whole reality, and we can never see the full reality unless if we really understand what's going on here. Okay, so this is great for math, but it doesn't represent reality, because that 2 dimensions, that up, down, that linear has some sort of depth, has some sort of breadth. Otherwise it would still be 0 dimension. So it could be this thick. If you zoom in on it, the line is this thick, or this thin, or so thin that you can't even see it. And that would be no dimension. So even that gives layers of dimension. So your zoom, your perspective, where you're viewing from, how close you're viewing from, gives you so much variability that it's innumerable. It's almost uncalculable. Everything is calculable in a sense, but basically, okay, let me get to the point here. So that's just that one dimension. Then you go in 2 dimensions. Now you have, because they have that graph, you have these 2 dimensions where you can go anywhere. But here's the thing. Those 2 dimensions are really an infinite number of divisions. And it's just like on here where you put the division or the demarcations, you can demarcate that as well. But being the nature of reality, you could demarc that so much so that it's like, basically with numbers it's the same thing. You have 1 and 2, but basically you can have 1.000000000000001, 1.00000000002, and you have an infinite layer of numbers that can be before 1 and 2. I shouldn't say infinite, probably nearly infinite. Okay, so that exact thing for the in-between numbers, and why numbers are even difficult for solid labeling, because there's always differentiation between things that are being numbered. There's always something to differentiate from something else, even although it may appear identical. Nothing is truly identical. Okay, so anyways, we'll get back to that. So we're only in 2 dimensions. There are infinite dimensions in that, even within that 2 dimensions. There are nearly infinite dimensions. Now you have X, Y, and Z. X, Y, and Z. Now you have X, Y, Z axis. That same thing, the demarcation problem, goes for this as well. Now it's great for AutoCAD or designing or doing materialistic work, material work. It's great for it because that is a structured analytical way of looking at it. But actually, if you look at that dimension there, you get, if you were to go in all of those dimensions and demarcate, you would have a solid ball. It would look like a solid black ball, because there's so much infinite variability in that 2 dimension, let alone supposedly 3 or 4 or 5. And this is before we even introduce time. Oh shoot. How do we get time in there too? Dang. Oh man, now we really got some problems. How are we going to number this stuff? Basically, and I'm sorry for being, degrading there. I don't mean to degrade, because it's all part of it. It's all important. All the science that we've come to this day is absolutely necessary for bringing us to this point today. So now we have time. And how do we integrate time? Well, this is time, and this can represent space. People see them as one thing. Einstein saw them as one thing. I see them as one thing, actually. I see everything as one thing. Nearly everything. So basically, time, this is like the linear view of time. Moves in waves or whatever, some people say. But basically, we have the same problem even with time. Because time is not only in length, expanding in length, it actually expands from a center point, and it expands out in the future and in the past at the same time. I know it sounds counterintuitive and crazy, but I promise you that's what's happening. And that goes the same here. It's the same thing, expanding out. Basically, those points, all those points, if you've seen my Singularity Matrix video, this applies to this as well, because that center point right there of convergence of all the dimensions represents that singularity dimension. And that's when we bring in the sacred feminine. Ooh, looks like a rosy cross. Cross, singularity, cross. Alright, anyways. So we have the singularity at the core of everything, running all force. And this is the basic depiction of what that force, the flow of that force, what it looks like. I mean, you can't truly depict it because it's a multi-dimensional thing. But this is the best I got for right now. So now, what is really happening is time, space, all the dimensions are literally one in that singularity dimension in the center there. See where I drew that? See where I drew this? So they're all inextricably linked at that central location. Now they also are traveling in this way, out this way, and this way. But here's the thing. It's traveling. I say travel, but nothing truly moves or travels. It's expanding in this kind of way here. Goes back around, wraps back around, comes back in, and spirals back to singularity. Boom. So you have this, it's flowing out, back in. Okay. Now if I were to do this again, spiral it out. Spiral it back in. Now that's a little bit more what like dimensions would look like, but they don't really look like that either. This is just to show they're tied in and where they're tied in. The closer they are to the center point, or the, you could call it your, it's something with the perspective point, vanishing point, they call it in painting. It's got a lot of different names. But basically, that point is where all of the differences are one. There are no differences at the very center of that point. There's no difference between time, space, matter, anything really. But as this spirals out from that connection point where it's all one, that's where it begins to separate. And its separation becomes further and further and further out so much. And it's easier to explain this with emotion for me, but I can explain it with physics too. But you come so far from unity, and you are creating your own, and you're trying to be unique and create your own thing. But your distance and your separation makes you long for reconnection. Makes you long for reconnection. So what do? You find the only path to reconnect, which is basically spiraling back into the female end of the singularity, which is, this can't really be depicted. It's impossible to depict this part, especially because where it takes it in through space and time. So it doesn't travel anywhere. Like as entropy is taking place and these quantum energy packets are coming off of the dying matter and going back into singularity, what they're doing is they're actually traveling inside themselves back through the singularity, back through the female end, the infinite cosmic womb that everything is like from. It's nothing, it's infinite nothing, but because it's infinite nothing, that allows for the ability for that to be here. Like nothing else. If this book wasn't here right now, That's the only reason why it can be there. You can't have two of these books or these notebooks in the same place. So the first priority for something to exist is it actually can't exist, at least in that space and time. So that's where the separation comes basically we get a bunch of new complexity from traveling away from the center. And then when we come back and travel back through the female end of the singularity, we're recycled and shot back through male ends of the singularity, which is the biggest one that we can see with our own eyes anyways. And the most potent one basically is the sun. If you look at the sun, every light particle actually has this same energy shape. It's the singularity at the center of it, and then it has an energy packet that flows back in and out, which people call protons or neutrons or photons or whatever, or electrons, whatever. Anyways, yeah, so they say those are in an orbital. They're not an orbit, because an orbit is straight and flat and even. These are called orbitals. And then they actually are predicting, like, they can't see the actual thing, but they can predict where it is. They take like little snapshots and see where it is. And you have this field that develops because of taking little snapshots of where that energy packet is at any time. And it actually builds a shape. It's like an hourglass shape, just like this, an hourglass shape with a field in the center, just like this. Another hourglass shape here. And then when you do the whole thing, it's actually a sphere. Okay. So basically at the center of the sun, after that dies off and flips back inside of itself through the female end of the singularity, I used to say traveled into the female end of the singularity, but it's that's not accurate. It's like literally turning inside of itself back to the female end of the singularity, which is connected to all singularity and everywhere, when and thing. But there's certain pathways that are stronger in the manifold matrix, in the singularity manifold matrix, that bring it out to recycle at the center of suns and stars. And brought you out this morning to watch the sunrise. We might have missed it a little bit, but that's okay. Was gonna go out to the beach, but I got the kids and stuff to take care of right now. They're just sleeping still, so. Alright, so basically, as these are recycled and pop back in through the female end, they come out of the male ends of the singularity, which are at the center of suns, stars, atoms, galaxies, everything. And that's like the male end of the manifold. That's the exhaust end of the manifold. And as this is popping in through the female end of singularity and coming back out the male end of singularity, what's happening is it's actually like if you've ever siphoned water or seen like a bead of dew on the grass. It has like a surface tension. It has like a force that wants to keep things with it. So basically when it's traveling through in and out of that singularity, it's pulling from nothing. Where everything else came from, it's pulling from that nothing more. I know it sounds crazy, but so it's like a siphon, and everything works in this like siphon manner. This actually unifies all the theories, all the different theories and fields of science about creation, and everywhere that they are arguing is where I can see the truth, where we can see the truth. Basically, because anytime I see this versus that, or they're fighting it's this or that, I know that it's some sort of variation of what they're both saying. So look from both of their perspectives, perceive it equally like I fully believe, Then through my own personal experience, discern, experiential knowledge, I discern. And then through divine inspiration or personal divination, I confirm. So, anyways, all religious symbols point to this exact thing here. I'll give you an example. The cross. You get the cross. Boom, boom, the cross. Okay, it's pointing to this, the singularity at the center. The cross. When he crossed. Okay. Now you have, here, let's do the Templar cross. I forgot what it's called. It's probably different names for it. But look at this one. What's that look like? Looks kind of like that, huh? That's exactly what it is. It points to the center, the singularity. If you look at every religious symbol, basically, they're all pointing to the singularity and to this same concept here. Look at the menorah. It's a candlestick with slightly lower sticks. I don't remember how many on each side. But whatever, you get the idea. Menorah. And then this one's the tallest one, or the one lit last, or the one most important, or whatever. And that's the singularity. That's the trunk of the universe. That is the manifold of the universe, and everything branching off of it, fractalizing out in octaves, following the Fibonacci sequence and the phi ratio. And alright, so here's another funny, interesting thing. Shama, my name's Shama. This is what they call the candle. They have a candle that lights all the other candles. And that's what my name represents, or means in Hebrew. And in Sanskrit, it's Sama, and that means light, something about light as well. And then there's also, I'm not sure what other language, but one of them is also, I think Shama in Hebrew means God hears, but the candle that they call that is also Shama. And then there's also a prayer or some sort of thing that they do that's called Shama as well. I'm not being egoy. I'm just trying to show you guys the connections that I've like been receiving and stuff, because this really has nothing to do with ego. It's the less ego you have, the less personal ego you have pride in or feed, the more you can channel information like this, basically. And if you have a really truly divine intention, then it really comes. And then when you get information from certain sources, the ultimate source is always God. But when you get information from certain sources, you have to make sure you give glory to those sources, and then the glory will be repaid back. It's always repaid back. It's like you put something forward, you give up something, and you get tenfold. That's what the tithing and stuff is all about. The preachers are literally like twisting it in reverse. It's not for the church. The tithing is for the people. The church is for the people. Everything the church does is for the people, and that's how the church is paid. So, but true tithing is seeing a need and filling it, regardless of whether you like that person or what you judge that person to be or anything. You just help best you can. And that's sort of in relation to idolatry. Basically, idolatry is like holding any one or thing above any other one or thing. And that's because God is in everything. We have to love God with all our heart, and that would be the only law we need. If we followed that one law, there would be no need for any other laws or statutes or ordinances or anything. Okay, so back to the science. My bad for getting off subject on there a little bit. So the reason why I made this video is because I see a lot of people saying, oh, there's 11 dimensions. Oh, there's 9, this many dimensions. And anytime I see that, God shows me instantly, like, they're struggling. They're really trying really hard to figure things out. And it's not an effort. It's just understanding how the universe works. The universe doesn't count anything. It just unfolds in a pattern. It doesn't count anything because there's always errors in the pattern. And in those errors, they're beautiful. Sometimes they're really ugly and are bad. Sometimes the errors are really beautiful and are advantageous. And that's how new patterns and new complexity is added to the system. It's always just adding complexity. Never loses complexity. Although there is the cycle of life and death and the illusion of losing complexity, this is where science is a misunderstanding as well, where entropy is the loss of all that was and that is. Like, as that rock is dying off, or as this is rotting, some grass or anything is rotting and dying away, it's breaking down and losing organization, is what they say. But what's happening is actually coming down. It is degrading down to its most fundamental particle, but it's not really a particle, force, so it can go back into the cosmic womb, to the sacred mother, to be renewed and to bring back something forth as it comes back out again. So, all right, where was I? Yeah, so time, space, and matter, everything's actually entwined in that dimensional thing. Consciousness, the electromagnetic spectrum, and I didn't go further as well because this is just the basic. These spirals that are going in these directions also go in every direction, just like in our innumerable, just like these straight line demarcations were. So, you really can't number anything except for 1. Well, I shouldn't say that. Anytime I say anything or always, I'm wrong. So, there's only one number 1. I mean, there's only 1 0. There's only 1 infinity. There's only 1 0. There's only 1 1. There's only 1 2. There's only 1 3. There's only 1 4. There's only 1 5, etc., 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 etc. Basically, all the others are just representations of those originals. So, yeah, I'm gonna make this into another video. I'm going to just start talking about some other stuff now, I think. So, no, never mind. I'm gonna save it. It's 28 minutes. I love you guys. I hope you got something out of this or understood it. Please just let me know if you need anything. Basically, if you ever see anybody numbering dimensions, tell them Shama said try not to do that because it will limit your perspective of the real reality. You can do it. Of course you can do it. We wouldn't have AutoCAD. We wouldn't have engineering and stuff like that. So we need it. I'm not saying we don't need it. But everything after serving its purpose should be let go till it needs to be used again for that purpose. So let's not abuse our numbers. Let's use them with wisdom and understanding and truth. Alright, I love you guys. I'll see you in the center.